I'm Hollis from DiversiTree, welcoming Courage. Courage, can you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are.
My name is Courage. I'm originally from Scottsdale, Nebraska. I now live in Los Angeles, California. I'm Ogalala Lakota, and I'm also mestizo.
Okay, you're also, I didn't hear the second part.
Mestizo. So I also have roots in indigenous Mexico.
Okay, awesome, great. Thanks for defining that for us. I think most people know
Kind of
about the
explains,
Lakota peoples. I'm sorry?
kind of explains the background.
Yeah, exactly.
No
Okay,
last minute decorating.
so, and you would consider yourself a two spirit, is that true?
That is true.
Okay, can you tell us what that means? For some people don't know what that means really.
Absolutely. Um, it's still some. The term itself is only about. It's only over 20 years old. It was created in the 1980s. It was a term that is supposed to try to identify a large number of people across many different cultures. But in over 135 tribes, there has been evidence for there to have been an acknowledgement of more than one gender, or that sexuality was very complex, and that there was a spiritual reason for that. Many of these cultures, what seemed to be a common theme is that if you felt or expressed differently, if you're someone who had possessed qualities of the opposite sex, or if you're able to take on the roles of the opposite sex so well, or if there's something in you, say like a female spirit within a male who longs for the company of another male, or a male spirit and a female who longs for the company of another female, likely that means that you have more than one spirit within you. You have a male and a female spirit. And for a lot of these cultures, that was a rarity. That was like, being born with more than one pair of arms in Hindu culture. It's something that's like really the male and female dynamics play such an important part in so many Native American cultures. And so when you have someone that reflects both those genders so well in one person, it's something that is very likely sacred. Many of these traditions that we're talking about really did see, if someone was born differently, it means there's a reason for that, and that there's probably a very special role for that very special person in their society that no one else can fill, because they can feel and act and think um, in a bigger um, in more ways than the average person, than the average one spirit male or the average one spirit female. And so they were regarded as medicine men. They were regarded as wedding counselors, marriage counselors. They were people who named the children. They had amazing roles in their societies, which could really go in go into at depth, because it has a really rich history behind it. So really now, especially since the creation of the term Two Spirit, what it's trying to do is that it's trying to bring that back into modern Native communities, to say you're LGBT. Not only is there nothing wrong with you, not only are you not evil or confused or sick, like society today often tries to convince people, but you're actually sacred. There's something about you that is holy, if you will. If you want, there's actually an article that I wrote on it that started everything. Last year, it's called Gays Are Holy. If you type that into Google, you'll be able to find it. But it was actually that article that allowed me personally to really dive into what Two Spirit tradition actually was. And when I realized that it actually applied to me as well, that led to this domino effect that allowed me to reconnect with the Native American community here in Los Angeles like I never did before. And then when I got to Standing Rock, of course, those connections I made eventually would give me the opportunity to get to Standing Rock myself. I ended up being the person to start the Two Spirit Camp there. And so it was obviously an amazing year for me this year, not just personally, but as far as being a part of what has become, the largest, most significant Native American event in my lifetime, if not indigenous world history.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think it's kind of making history. And can you talk? Because, I mean, Standing Rock is a really amazing thing. I was there myself. And can you just talk a little bit about why it started? Help some other people understand what it's all about and what is significant. Not just the water protectors, but also the tribal connections there. Because I've for sure seen that happening too. There's so many tribes came together in one place.
Yeah, there is so much to it. And just like I feel like every day I wake up and I see and I read a new reason for why it's significant. But if I were to try to like sum it up in just so many sentences, is that it started out people my age in that area wanted to do something to try to draw attention to this to the issue of this pipeline being built, and then it just exploded from there. Where they actually the things they did online, the things that they did to connect to other natives across the country, other tribes. They just had this almost like this otherworldly effect on people, and just people just started coming in and supporting and then contacting them and wanting to be a part of it. And before you know it, is that you had thousands and thousands of people there. When I arrived there, it was on September 9th. Ironically, it was the time. It was when the federal judge decided against us in that case with DAPL, but it was also when Obama issued the halt. There was 7,000 people there when I was there. As of in the last week, even considering the weather, there's been somewhere around 11 to 12,000 now, and so like that's really how much this has moved people and really has ignited something within them to where they feel that this is something that won't happen for not just something that won't happen for a very long time, but something that everyone wants to be a part of because it means so many different things. The tribal connections is that when I was there was somewhere around 260 tribes that were representing themselves at Standing Rock. Nothing like this has ever happened in tribal history in the U.S., let alone indigenous history. We've never seen this level of unification amongst the indigenous peoples of the world. I mean, the 7 bands of the Lakota tribe were together, and last time that happened was 150 years ago during the Battle of Little Bighorn in the rise against Custer. And so it's just, you think about this and it just gives you chills because you don't really realize how significant it is and how the indigenous world, the world over, will never be the same after this. And it just gives you an incredible amount of hope and it hopes that we'll be able to finally turn around a horrible trend that we've seen throughout history, which is indigenous people have always been the one who have been trampled on, always the ones who've been pushed out of the way, always the ones who have suffered an incredible amount of oppression and genocide and injustice just because they were in the way of conquerors who happened to be a lot more ambitious, a lot more, enterprising, if you will. And so I really feel like this is an amazing opportunity for the U.S. that I haven't seen it taken advantage of yet to really own up to the fact that, yes, we've had a horrible history before, and this country was kind of founded on some things that no one should be proud of. But now is a time to where obviously we are ignited in a way. We are now reconnecting with our roots in a way. We're learning what it means to be Native American again, and not just our traditions and our ceremonies, but really our worldview and our values that transform the way that we live and those around us. And so now is an amazing time to not just connect with each other tribally, but to connect with have this mutual understanding between the worlds, where they realize that we are people with a very distinct mindset, worldview, values, and a lot of those things, especially our values, are things that their world especially needs to learn above all things, especially balance in all things and respect for all things. And so I guess kind of the last thing I'll ring in there is just that natives and indigenous people are coming from everywhere. I mean, I literally mean everywhere, from the Amazon, from Hawaii, from Alaska. We have the
I think I seen a. I was about to say, I think I seen a tribe from New Zealand.
Yes, exactly, New Zealand. I think I'm probably going to botch exactly how you pronounce it. It's the Moana Yep, I lost it, but they're definitely known for performing the haka, which is supposed to be this very powerful prayer. And they recently joined us up there and really um, brought in this amazing culture that was incredible in its own distinctiveness. And so, yeah, we have people in tribes from all over the world joining us, and they realize that this is a stand that symbolizes indigenous rising, if you will. Kind of, I may kind of borrow the name from that one music group. You know, it means so many things to so many different people, and like I said, is that people are coming and learning what it means to be Native again, but also it allows things like the Two Spirit tradition to suddenly um, to have a chance to be revived and to be reinvigorated, reincorporated back into our communities. You know, where people are learning their language for the first time. I learned how to ride a horse for the first time. And Lakota, he never learned how to ride a horse, you know. And so it's like, that was a big thing for me, as well as a very sad thing prior. But at the same time, you know, you saw that reconnecting. You saw people coming who quit their jobs, who ended bad relationships, who left the toxic cities that they lived in or whatever to be back in Standing Rock. And what they found was things that made them complete and things that they never knew about that they realized that was not only a part of their heritage, but was something that seemed intrinsic in who they're in the nature of their spirit. And so Standing Rock is incredible, where it has transformed so many lives, and it has brought together the Native community in a way that has never happened before. And I feel that's going to give us the power to no longer be this invisible minority, no longer be this group of people who've been idle for a long time. I feel it's going to allow us to move forward and be a voice, not just for, you know, Native culture and history, not just for environmental issues, but to move mankind into a better place than where it's at now, where we have this immense imbalance where where right now it's the haves and the have-nots. You know, the greedy corporate world and just and people who have very little and have fewer freedoms every day. It seems like no group of people could be more symbolic in taking on the corporate world than Native Americans, who understand respect and balance more than most, you know, most people.
Yeah.
And so it's just an incredibly symbolic thing. And the fact that we had 2,000 to 4,000 veterans that joined us just recently to protect us from the police, not only something about police brutality, but also it says something about how there are many people within the military, within service, who want to try to move forward and to begin a new relationship with our federal government that will lead us into a whole new era for this country. And so obviously there are a lot of them who want to move on. The fact that video that I saw of all those military veterans getting on their knees and literally like begging for forgiveness, I couldn't stop crying because of like how incredibly powerful it was.
Yeah.
Seeing that humility.
Yeah.
And so that's a really good idea about how like this event is tying in so many things that we've needed to talk about, that we needed to see happen, and that could lead to things that we've never seen before.
So I have a question for you. So one of the things that I noticed was that even when I was there, it was Thanksgiving or forgiving. But, you know, a lot of people know that holiday is Thanksgiving. It doesn't, you know, it was the most meaningful Thanksgiving I think I've ever had in my life. But anyway, um, I understood what it felt like for the white people to be coming there, what it must have felt like for the indigenous people, because they almost felt recolonized in a way. But I wonder if from the indigenous perspective, especially Two Spirits, if you feel more like white people are and people that have white skin, because I believe a lot of us have indigenous blood in us if we were to check. Um, but if people with whiter skin, if you know, they want, I think they truly, and if they've come there, if they've heard the call, that they truly want to support the indigenous people, but unfortunately, some people are unaware of what white privilege means. And when you walk around with white skin versus a darker skin, and I know it's not just indigenous people, but that's what we're talking about right now. So, and I feel like there was a lot of white people that are trying to support indigenous people, and I think that's a really special piece of it. I think that's really special. So, do you have any thoughts on that?
Too many, but but I think if I were to try to hit it on the head, is that, well, white privilege. That's part of the discussion that is the discussion of our time. It's a discussion that really didn't exist during slavery or during the civil rights era. It's a new discussion that people are just beginning to grasp as a discussion period. The idea of white privilege. So many people don't even believe that should be a term for anything because it doesn't exist to them. And that's the challenge today. That's the really hard challenge, is trying to talk about how it does exist, but it's not something to take personally. It's just like when you think about, you cannot take a people out of their historical context. You have to realize that, if we're at a time, let's use the alphabet for a metaphor, if we're at time M, then you can't really just disregard all the letters of the alphabet that came before. I mean, we got here in a certain way. Things happened just before we were born, just in the last decade and the decade before that. I mean, it was only about 140 years ago when we had slavery. It was only half a century ago when the last native peoples went through horrible colonization, violent colonization, like Alaska and Hawaii. We don't even, like, if you look into the South, even just to take it out of the indigenous historical context, it hasn't really, lots of areas in the South haven't even recovered from the Civil War. And so you cannot think that by just passing a couple laws or just saying, okay, some prominent figure saying, no, this is wrong, that all of a sudden everything's going to be perfect. Everyone's going to be equal. Everything's going to be great. What you're going to realize is that the history is in all our systems. The history is in the way we think. The history is still in the way that we teach. All these systems in our society are unfortunately still made for and by and of white people. And that has nothing to do, it's not characterizing white people today as like bad or good or whatever. It's simply saying that if you're someone of color, you're going to have a much more complex and hard time living in the time that we're living in because, like I said, it has nothing to do with white people as the today out there in this country. But like, if you're white, you don't have to worry about your homeland being destroyed and violated and desecrated by a pipeline. White people have no idea what it's like to have a homeland, to have a motherland that you're spiritually connected to. If you are a black man, it's like white people don't have to worry about always having to look great, and so that you won't be discriminated against when being hired for a job, and that you don't have to worry about cops constantly wondering what you're up to. If you're a Latino, you never have to worry about being mistaken for an illegal immigrant or undocumented immigrant walking down the street. You don't have to worry about someone throwing away your resume because you have a Hispanic last name, which all of this shows, all of this is in studies. Look it up. And so it's like, that's what white privilege is that when you're not white, when you're a person of color, you have so much more complexity to your life. Even if it's simple as being born into a family that's very poor, just because statistically, if you're Latino or Black, you're likely going to be born into a more poor neighborhood, and you're going to have a hard time getting a decent education because your schools aren't funded in the same way that in the white neighborhoods and the white schools, giving the whites in the area a better education. So it's like it's economic racism, and so systematic racism. That's the kind of battle that we're dealing with now. So, anyways, to kind of finish it off, is that talking about Standing Rock is that I think a lot of them are going there realizing that it really is a different story if you're a Native American, to live in this time, to grow up in Native American families, to live on reservations. And so they're going there and they're being shocked to see how natives are being treated, but also like how racism or systematic racism is kind of imbued in everything. As you may know, a lot of people hopefully will know, is that the pipeline was originally going to go through Bismarck, which is a predominantly white area, a city. I think it's 92% white. Well, anyways, they didn't want the pipeline through that city, and so the pipeline just happily moved it down right through reservation land, and they're quite literally holding people at gunpoint or were to take that pipeline. And so it's just like, and the thing is that if you look across the country, there is a very disturbing trend of all the major pipelines going through native land. I wonder why that is. It's because we've never really been a very powerful politically minority before. It's because that they're going to see a lot less pushback or resistance because there's not as many of us, and that the media is probably not going to cover us because just like they have any vested money or interests in covering us. And there's so many little threads that are running through this event. It's just incredible to see like everything just revolve around this, and we find out that it's all interconnected, and that this whole revolution, this whole indigenous revival, this entire event is so relevant for the time in so many ways. And when it comes to things like what it means to be a person of color nowadays, as far as your experience, and what it means to be a white person nowadays, as far as your experience, how that's a huge part of the realization and the learning experience that we're all having. And I think it's just something, it's nothing at all. It doesn't have to do with individuals anymore. It doesn't have to do exactly with your skin color. It has to do with the historical context of where your family came from, which is kind of tied to your skin color. And last thing I say usually is that when it comes to social economic justice and when it comes to race, is that we used to kind of treat them as separate issues because simply being of a certain race meant very specific things for you in society. But now, because of that historical context, I often equate it to the metaphor of like a dog that fights a kid. If the dog is the social economics and the kid is a person's race, it's like it's like linked now. It's like you cannot separate one issue from the other. You can't talk about the dog without talking about the kid. You can't talk about social economic justice without talking about the races that are linked to it because of historical context. And so that's usually how I talk about it. It's not about race anymore. It's not purely about social economics anymore. It's about the two and how they're interlinked, and especially how we have to make people realize that they are linked. And that is the issue of our time, is getting people to realize that and educating people that you cannot separate yourself from history as much as you want to.
For sure. I'm totally there with you on that. I grew up in a low income family, so I at least have half of the idea anyway. And anyway, can you tell me about the Two Spirits' role in Standing Rock? I know that Two Spirits have had a pretty big role in Standing Rock's actions and some of the ceremonies and the prayer. We talk a lot about prayer at DiversiTree because I think prayer is pretty important. I think a lot of queer folks don't have a lot of prayer because we've been told that we're evil or disgusting or gross. And so I think Two Spirits have a role in the indigenous culture as sort of spiritual shamans, or whatever name you want to put on it, spiritual person. So can you tell us about that?
Yes, I can do my best. As you know, is that I left Standing Rock around October 24th, and when I came back, it's like a person would be surprised as to how much Standing Rock work there is to be done outside of Standing Rock, especially in LA. I have just been busy every single day with the movement. I started an online Facebook page called Courage Activists and stuff. And so like there's been so much to do. But anyways, as far as like when I was there and everything that I saw and was a part of myself, is that two spirits obviously have a very special role within our communities. And how I saw that specifically happen is that we provided the balance between the two dynamics. We were kind of like the bridge, the in-between, if you will. We seem in ceremony, we seem to provide, we were the ones who represented literally the in-between, who represented the balance to where, like during the water ceremony, that when I was part of it, they would have the women go one by one and offer their prayers to the river, and then they would have the two spirits offer their prayers to the river. They said, men who identify as women, women who identify as men, and those who don't identify as either. They had us go down, and it seemed to provide like this acknowledgement that the spirit really is something that transcends across the spectrum of gender, and really acknowledging that balance is what allows a community to balance itself out. We were seen as people who had like a powerful spiritual energy. Many times when I was at Standing Rock, one time when we came down during our grand entry, they were having a ceremony where there was a sacred hoop that only could be touched by certain people, or there were some kids who were holding it, and they were coming up and finishing their ceremony as we were coming down, and they personally asked us to touch the hoop and bless it with our energies, because they said that two-spirited people have extremely potent energy because of the nature of our souls, of our spirits, because we have more than one. And they considered it a huge blessing to be able for us to be able to take part in that. Other things I recall is just that there was an acknowledgement of really people felt blessed to have a two-spirit member of their family or their tribe or their group. I met several people who said that they work with two-spirited people and that they brought in something that no one else brought in. They brought in a certain humility, a certain kind of spiritual humility that allowed you to kind of realize the nature of existence and spirit, and it brought a certain, again, I want to say balance, and they felt like they worked so well by having someone there who was in between, where you didn't really have to deal or have to work with somebody who had a very strong female spirit, very strong male spirit. You had someone who was able to kind of be that in between and be able to talk about and offer perspectives that seemed to be a mixture and a compromise of the two mindsets of the two spirits. My whole life, I've always been told that I'm a very interesting balance, 50-50 between male and female, as far as like how I speak, how I come off, how I think. And so what I saw in Standing Rock is that I saw us participate in a way where we were that bridge between the two dynamics, and we were always asked to take part in things because of our potent spiritual energy, because of the special nature of our souls, because traditionally we were thought to have a certain connection to the spirit world that most people don't, or a lot of people don't, and that we provided like that extra element into a society that allowed us to transform it in a way to be a balance breaker. And so I'm hoping that kind of answers the question.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also thinking back about a month as far as what specifically happened at Standing Rock.
Yeah, it's okay. I plan to get on to the other pieces of that as well. I know that you started I think you had like a gay camp, and then later it became two-spirit camp, and that's what happened at Standing Rock. You guys had a gay camp, is that true? And then it turned into more of a two-spirit camp?
No, it started as a two-spirit camp.
Okay.
And so, because I remember one day I pretty much decided that I wanted to find a Two-Spirit camp because I heard that there used to be one at one point. And so I asked around everywhere, and I could not find one. And then the next morning, one of a friend that I had made, his name was Mark, he came up to me one morning and said, "Hey, I know you weren't able to find one, but you should start one. You know, I'm gonna find a flag. I'll find you a post, and here's a shovel, and we'll make it happen." And I kind of got, kind of shoehorned into like starting my own camp. And so that whole entire day, I went around everywhere trying to find materials, and I found this big, huge white banner and a bunch of, paint of every colors. And then about like 10, 11 o'clock at night, I went into this teepee, and then I just painted whatever came to mind. I used these stencils and this black paint and stuff like that, and just created something just to make something. And then it was like 1 o'clock in the morning when I finished it. And that is how I started, how I created the banner that everyone sees now that says Two-Spirit Camp.
Yeah, I think I have a picture of that.
Hmm?
I have a good picture of it. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, next morning I laid it out and everything to hang it up, and then like right away people started like coming one by one saying like, "I'm so glad this is here. You have no idea how much this means to me," and everything. So it started as a Two-Spirit Camp, but it eventually evolved into Two-Spirit Nation as Candy Brings Plenty and the international connections and representatives that supported her came in and transformed it into what it is today. So it started as a Two-Spirit Camp. So
Okay, awesome. Well, I got some great images there, and I'm hoping to find some time to talk to Candy. But can you help first of all, I have two little things that you can help people with. Is if someone is looking to connect with other two spirits or learn more about maybe studying the two-spirit spirituality, can you tell them how they can do that and what other people can do if they want to support the Dakota Access Pipeline? What can they do if they can't go there? And that's not necessarily helpful right now. There's a lot to do outside. So can you tell us about those two things?
yeah, I'll do my best. Just very small specifics that I want to make sure I get right. But for the Two-Spirit Camp that I started, that now is under the guidance of Candy and the international Two-Spirit community, you can connect with that and find out about everything they're doing on facebook.com/Two-Spirit-Nation. The Facebook page that I created when I first started the camp was facebook.com/Standing Rock Two-Spirits, which I kind of transformed into my Courage the Activist page, where I talk about NODAPL and all kinds of things. And so you can also follow that if you want to, where I talk a lot about the Two-Spirit stuff. And let's see here, there's also a Fundly, where we're always looking for donations for the Two-Spirit Camp. You will find that on Two-Spirit Nation on the Facebook page. And there is also on Two-Spirit Nation, there is an address where you can send physical donations. And I think that is actually not too hard for them to access. So if you need to send codes or anything like that, that would be a great place to send it. As far as other things, again, Facebook, of course, it's been a huge component in this movement. Follow Red Warrior Camp, follow Sacred Stone Camp, and there are tons and tons and tons of Ossetishikoan or Standing Rock pages. There's an official Standing Rock website. If you put in Ossetishikoan in Google, you'll be able to find the official one. Be very careful of any fakes, but I think it'll be pretty obvious which ones are fake. And if you want to find out more about what's happening specifically at Two-Spirit, to have a direct connection to someone who's at the camp, contact Candy Brings Plenty. You'll also find her on the Two-Spirit Nation page. And so that kind of covers the donations and whatnot. I'm sure the Ossetishikoan Facebook pages and website will have links to their own donation drive, whether it be physical or monetary.
I'll try to include links to those. I have all of that. I can include links.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you'll be able to do a much better job than I'm able to do off the bat here.
I can make them clickable. I can make them clickable.
Last thing I'll say here, though, is that obviously one thing you can do is that the more people know about this, the better. And of course, the actual reality of what's happening, because you can't trust the mainstream media. It's been insane as to how hard it's been to have them cover us, let alone cover the things that actually matter, especially human rights violations. That's been the biggest thing for me. And so, if you're able to, uh, find a way to speak at your church, or find a way to arrange a little meeting or get together in the library, create a Facebook group even. Just like there are so many ways that you can get people in your own community involved, knowing about this, and of course realizing that there's so much work left to be done. This is not the only pipeline that's happening. This is not the only place in the world where water is being threatened because of corporate greed. This is not the only Native American issue. This is not, and of course this is not over as far as DAPL is concerned. One thing I definitely want to say here before we wrap up is that, even though the Army Corps of Engineers said that, they do not recommend, they will deny the easement to drill under the river, and that it will be illegal to do so. And, as far as other environmental analyses and input, it should not happen. DAPL said that they are more than willing to drill under the river anyways, even if it means a $50,000 day fine, because they can afford it. And this really, really illustrates exactly the kind of world that we live in now, where it's like if you have enough money, you can do whatever you want, no matter how unethical or how illegal, and so that really shows you just the power that these corporations have. And so this is obviously not over. They can still drill under the river, just regardless of what the Army Corps has said. And so as far as like where it'll go now with that, we don't really know, but obviously you can tell
Well,
there's still around 10.
I don't know if you know, but today there was good news posted that the Army of Engineers might open some sort of water and raise the level of the water, which would also flood the camp. So I think there's something going on about that, which would make drilling next to impossible for the energy partners. Um, so, like now I feel like now we're just going back and forth with, okay, well, if you do that, I'm going to do this, and I don't know what's going to come of that. I think that's very smart of the Army of Engineers. And also, I'm wondering if the Standing Rock elders will decide to get the camp, to evacuate the camp so we can save the water. So, you know what I mean? I don't know if was on the Facebook groups today. Yeah. So
Keep on your toes. There's always something happening every single
every
day.
day.
Like, wow.
Every day.
So it keeps you busy for sure. So so with that, it's like the battle is never over, and you never know. It's like since we have Trump coming into office, we have no idea as far as what's going to happen there, and what kind of like just unconstitutional things he might do or whatever. He just like considering like all the extreme legal things I saw Morton County do and just DAPL do. It just, I mean, it's I want to say very game, but it's just you have no idea what's going to happen. It's just like it is completely unpredictable as far as like where this fight will go. But I just know though, you can see with all the water protectors who are there right now, and like negative 20-degree weather and blizzards, standing out there in prayer. I mean, not only do I feel guilty for like being here right now and not being there, while they're freezing to death, is that like it definitely shows that there's so much work to be done, and that there's so many people behind this who are willing to fight this spiritual battle to the very end. And so there is still so much work to be done. Don't think that you are late in the game. We need every single one of you, every single person to jump on board and do something, because that's really what a movement's all about, is everyone doing a little bit of something. Because when millions and millions of people get involved in creating change can happen at an incredible pace. But of course, only when you believe that change will happen does it actually happen. And so that's really the thing I definitely want to leave people with, is that it's not too late. And as I found out coming from Standing Rock, there really is no limit or you really don't know the impact that you can make on this movement, the contribution that you can make until you really put yourself to the test and see what will come out of you. Or specifically citing this Two-Spirit camp, or even I actually organized a rally in my hometown in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, which I never thought I would ever see myself do. And so you have no idea what you have in yourself. And so what I would, just go out, do what you feel you can. You have no idea what it might transform into.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, and sharing your story, and just and being who you are. And I think that's really important. And I appreciate your service, and I appreciate all that you are. And thank you for being a Two-Spirit. So, all right,
Okay,
all right.
relations.
All my relations, my brother.
Take care.
Bye bye.